Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. My name is Catherine Tindall. I'm a CPA with Dominion Enterprise Services. We're a specialty tax and accounting firm for financial advisors. In today's episode, I have with me Matt Halloran. He's the co-founder and chief relationship officer at ProudMouth, the world's leading influence accelerator for financial advisors. So I guess you can probably guess what we're going to be talking about. Matt is an in-demand speaker who has appeared in over 1,000 podcasts and given hundreds of speeches. He hosts ProudMouth's Top Advisor Marketing podcast, which is how I found him, and where he and industry leaders empower advisors to become trusted, recognized authorities. So thank you so much for joining me today, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
So in the pre-show, we were talking about, things that you see missing in terms of what advisors aren't catching. And the big one is everybody's preaching content, which is intimidating on a number of levels, from like software and equipment and just that sort of thing. But I would love to get your thoughts for advisors who, they've Googled the microphones and that sort of thing.
Sure.
And it's really more about how do you create the content, because that's the true bottleneck in the piece. So what have you been seeing people do, and where have you been seeing people miss on that?
Well, I see a lot of people who get paralysis, right? So they know they have to be creating this content, but they're terrified. They don't know where to begin. And what there's a very easy way to begin your content marketing journey. And it's not buying, a recording studio and a great microphone and, a really expensive camera. It's literally leaving a client meeting, grabbing your phone and saying, I just had a client ask me this. This is how I answered the question. If you do that, all right, so making sure you're not violating any compliance regulations, because I'm very sensitive to compliance. But if you start there, get it approved. If there's any disclosures and disclaimers that are needed, obviously put those on the end, not at the beginning, at the end of each piece of content, and then start posting it where your ideal target market lives on social media, which could be Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, right? Unfortunately, a lot of it's TikTok, but none of you can be there, which is totally fine. But you can still make short form YouTube videos. You can make short form Instagram Reels, videos for LinkedIn, for Facebook stories, all of those sorts of things. And that's the best way to dip your toe in the water. And then the next step is you need to start creating long form content. And we can talk about that too, if you'd like.
Yeah. And I guess in terms of like actually deploying this, so it seems like the first place you need to, like you said, just get in there with your cell phone. Like, you'd be impressed with the actual quality of recording you can get off of a cell phone. And finding where people are living. Now, do you have recommendations around keeping that simple at first in terms of channels you're trying to deploy to? Or, have you found good tools for, hey, if you just get this one tool, you can just deploy across all the platforms? Like, what's your recommendation there?
Well, listen, if it was that simple, I wouldn't have a job. So it isn't, unfortunately, that simple, which sucks. But I think the big thing is any sort of content that you create, whether it's the short video content that I was just referring to and posting that on, well, first off, you have to be on YouTube. End of story, right? Whether you're doing a podcast, it has to be on YouTube. A video podcast has to be on YouTube. Short videos have to be on YouTube, because YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. And that's where people go to learn. It's unbelievable. Now, but what is the foundational question under what you're asking really has to do with understanding your ideal target market or your niche, right? So you really, really have to make sure that you know who you want to talk to. Because, Catherine, I've said this for years, you're never going to outspend Ken Fisher. You're just not, right?
Yep.
So if you're only going after that pre-retiree market, ages 62 and a half and above, or whatever the heck you want, right? Listen, you're just contributing to the noise. But if you want to focus on highly successful CPAs who focus on working with financial advisors, right? That's a real niche, right? Because, there aren't enough of you out there anyway, and you and I both know that. But that's a really, really great way to start. Now, just to rewind just a smidge, the short form video is the great way to start, but it's difficult to maintain because it's hard to create a discipline around that. That's why we know that the long form content, a 30-minute podcast episode, because no matter who you're going after, any niche, any person, any group of people, listen, they listen to podcasts. It's an
Mhm.
unbelievable number of people who listen to podcasts, and there aren't enough of them out there, especially in our space, to really
Mhm.
start filling that chasm.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and I think especially when if you have like a niche, like you have a target market, like I was just talking to a prospective client earlier today where his niche was police officers.
Well, yeah,
And he said, there's nobody really that does that. And so it's really quickly easy for him to create content for that audience. It's easier for him to find them, to do speaking events for them, to get recognized with associations, etc. So if you have any kind of niched element like that, once you get online, people
they
find you
do.
so quickly.
They do.
Yeah, that's great. And then in terms of like actual messaging, um, the taking experience from your actual conversations with people is awesome because it's like you're not having to create the content, you just be the content, which is so much easier.
Yeah.
Do you have other recommendations in terms of doing longer form content, like actually getting into podcasting or longer form YouTube content?
Yeah. So the step number one on that is before you ever hit record, you should have 12 episode outlines ready to go. And
Mhm.
we've done 8,000 episodes for advisors and over 100,000 social media posts. So this is literally all we do all day long. And what we found is when you start creating long form content, if you know what you're going to talk about next, your confidence is better and your performance is better. So you
Mm.
need to have both of those. And, by the way, ProudMouth has solutions to this, but I know I'm not going to be hawking any of our stuff. We actually have stuff to help with this. But here's a way, if you don't want to use our stuff, to do it yourself. Google it. I know it sounds hyper simplistic, but here's the thing. So we'll use your police officer example. Type into Google or AI, whatever you want to do. Like I am a big fan of doing research on AI. I'm not a huge fan of what comes out on the back end, but like
Mhm.
ask AI this question or Google, because Gemini or whatever it is now. What are the top 10 concerns that police officers have when it comes to retirement, inheritance, insurance, and their mortgage? Okay, so again, prompt engineering is something I think all of us are going to have to get really good at, but there's a level of specificity there. So I gave
Mhm.
it a specific parameters and I asked for it categorically. Guess what? It's going to freaking tell you. It's going to tell you exactly what is the most searched thing that is out there in the Googleverse that you
Yeah.
should be creating your content. And there you go. There's your episodes. And then you can dump those back into AI and say, okay, now I have these points on protection products, right? Can you please create, and I always say please, because they're going to come for us at some point. I'm kidding. But I always say please to AI and thank you to AI. But say, can you please create a podcast outline for this topic based off of this information? And guess what? It will do it for you. Now it's going to get you probably about 20%, maybe 30% of the way toward the finish line, but that's a great place to start.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And what have you seen advisors screw things up, in your
Oh
opinion, when they're
yeah.
going about doing this? Like, what are the biggest pitfalls that people seem to fall into? Hey there, Catherine here. Thanks for listening to the conversation. Just wanted to explain a little more about what we do. So, I'm a CPA here with Dominion. We're a tax firm that works specifically for financial advisors as they're growing and scaling their practices to help them avoid tax waste, make the right calls, and grow practices that they love. So if you're interested in saving more, you can DM me on LinkedIn with the word guide, and I'll send you over our guide for financial advisors to scale tax efficiently. All my top tips to unlock six-figure savings. Thanks, and keep enjoying the show.
I'm going to give you three if that's okay. So the first one is this has been studied called pod fade. Most people will get 6 to 8 episodes in and they quit because they don't realize
Mhm.
it's work and they
Yeah.
actually have to be prepared. A lot of them are like, oh, I can talk for a living, right? And they just show up and start babbling and nobody listens. They get frustrated and they drop, which leads me to number two. Solo casting is not something you should do. You don't solo cast. You interview people. That's because that's what people like. People like
Yeah.
to feel like they're participating, maybe it's passively or actively, in a cool conversation between two people who really know their stuff. And then the third biggest pitfall is impatience. Now, I'm not talking about impatience on the front end of just you realizing it's a lot of work, but long form content marketing, what we refer to as influence marketing, which, by the way, if you're going to get the attention of the next generation inheriting all this money, you have to have a strong social proof strategy, which is influence. Okay. But
Mhm.
you have to realize it's 18 to 24 months of grinding it out like your police officer advisor, right? Now, they might have a couple of ins here and there, but if that advisor, if she wants to be speaking at the National Police Association thing, it's going to take her 12, 18 months to begin having enough credibility with them to get on those stages. I've got a very, very quick story. We have a friend of mine I've known for many, many years, and his podcast is with nurse anesthetists. Okay, which
Mhm.
by the way is a real thing, and they make a crud ton of money, and nobody really talks to them because everybody wants to work with anesthesiologists or the doctors, but these people generally make a lot of money. So he started a podcast with the most famous nurse anesthetist out there. He's at every conference now. Took him
Mhm.
7 years, but now his practice is worth 10 times what everybody else's practice is because his whole firm is known as the company that works with nurse anesthetists. And by the way, there are like 100,000 of them in the United States. They're never going to be able to service that many people, but they are the go-to person, just like your police officer advisor friend. That's the key. You do those things. You make sure that you don't get pod fade. Don't show up and just start waxing philosophical. Have an interview-based format, and then make sure that you put the time in. Those three things, you're going to be really successful.
Yeah, no, that's really great advice. And I think for a lot of people, the patience is going to be the hardest part because at first it's like, oh, you only get a couple views there, a couple views here. But you have to realize that those are actual people listening.
Yeah.
And if you're speaking to a niche market, most likely it's somebody who's like your target demographic client. So, yeah, maybe it's going to take you an hour or two to publish each podcast, but it's like you would have spent an hour on the phone
That's
with
right.
that prospect. But now, however many people can listen to it, and maybe it takes longer to go through the process of people actually coming back to you. But I've been surprised even in my own, this is a fairly brief podcasting journey. I only started this podcast a couple months ago,
Hmm.
and I've already had people contact me from YouTube.
Yep.
And we don't have crazy view, maybe at the time of when this episode gets posted, it'll be more impressive. But when you are speaking really directly to a specific person and to a specific problem,
Mhm.
even a couple of views, like those are meaningful impressions. Unlike, when you see some of these big viral numbers that go out from, general content producers, like
Yeah.
it's not, don't compare yourself that way.
No, those are vanity metrics, man. It's just a load of hooey. So do the math, right? So we're talking to financial advisors. Do the math, right? So let's say it costs you $50,000 to have your podcast kick it, but like high quality, all of that stuff. So I'm just spitballing a number. How many clients, A plus clients, do you need to bring in to pay for that podcast in perpetuity? Do the
Mhm.
math. For
Yep.
some of you, it's one, right? For some of you,
Yeah.
it's five, right? But if you do it correctly and if you do it for long enough, it becomes a predictable stream of brand new prospects. And by the way, there's so many other benefits of having a podcast, like guests, right? So let's break down what you're doing here because I don't know if you've done this, but if you don't mind, right?
Yeah.
So
Go for it.
you're interviewing me, right? And I have a very, very large audience of your ideal clients. So
Hmm.
guess what's going to happen? I'm going to share this episode with everybody I know. And now you just gained access to my entire audience. That works. You do that. That's how we built our entire business here at ProudMouth. My partner and I, that was our business model from 2017. And we're doing pretty okay because, I mean, we've done a lot of episodes and a lot of social media posts for advisors. It works. And this is the model. Your model is the exact model that everybody needs to follow because it's how you can create a predictable stream of qualified prospects that you can bring in and start helping.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely, that's been my experience even with a very brief stint with this. I think when you were saying like, oh, wait for it to be 12 to 18 months, like it might actually not end up being that long, depending on how targeted you are and how
That's right.
proactive, and also I think just how concerned you are with really making the content quality enough for the people that are your audience,
That's right.
and really making it useful for them. That's really, really great advice. Yeah. So from personal experience, I can agree and say, yeah, do it. So people want to start a podcast. I'd love for them to get more information about what you're doing over at ProudMouth
Sure.
and maybe taking some of the fear of starting and operational drag that something like this causes. So can you give a little explanation of kind of how you guys work with advisors and the work that you do?
Yeah, so we really have a do it for you service, do it with you service, and then done for you service. Those are our three levels of service here. So whether you're fiercely independent and you just want to go ahead and learn how to do it all of yourself or all by yourself, that's our Pod Rocket Influence Academy. Super simple, lots of courses. We teach you everything. That's a little overwhelming, so take it bits and pieces at a time. Second level is we'll help you get it launched. And then after it's launched, you got it, go, run, have fun. And then we have our what we call our managed influence acceleration services, which is we just do it for you. You literally show up, know what you're going to talk about, get behind the mic. I have producers and interviewers. You drop the mic. We write social media posts. We do all the post production. Everything is custom done. And then all you have to do is get it approved by compliance. And then we give you all of these wonderful social media posts. So we've got those three levels. And that's what we do every day. And we only do it for advisors, just to be clear. So I'm sorry, Catherine, we don't work with CPAs. I don't work with estate planning attorneys. I don't work with real estate agents, because you pay for our experience, because we have done 8,000 episodes with zero compliance issues, because that's what our focus is. And we also know the language, and you know this better than anybody else. Financial advisors, just like CPAs, they have their own freaking language. If you don't know that language, then you need to find somebody who can write in that language. So that's what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. No, it's important. It's especially important in messaging, working with somebody who actually understands you, and specifically what you do makes such a big difference. So for people who are looking to get access to more resources, what's the best place for them to connect with you, Matt, or where would you like us to send people to?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn, honestly, because I'm all over LinkedIn all the time. I respond to all of my direct messages. So Matt Halloran at LinkedIn. You can type in podcasting expert. I'm the one who comes up. Or you can go to our website, which is proudmouth.com. We've got all sorts of great information there. And listen, if you don't hire us directly, we just know that you need to start this content creation journey. You are all content creators now. Marketing is fundamentally changed. That's what you need to do. And if you partner with somebody who can help you do it, it really reduces the stress. It helps you activate that content creator part of your body, because, by the way, you're doing it anyway, just like you said. And it also helps you get it out there in a compliant manner.
Yeah, that's great. And I think for a lot of people, don't use the excuse that you're going to have to go through compliance to make it not happen. I hear that from people. It's, oh, well, the compliance. It's like, don't make that the excuse. Well, great. I just want to thank you again for coming on and sharing those valuable insights with the audience and with me. I'm always half of the goal of this podcast is getting to know guests and providing good information for advisors. But since I'm in a very similar business model, a lot of it applies to me. So it's always topics that I'm genuinely interested in myself. So I really appreciate you coming on the show, Matt. And for people listening, if you could just take a moment and send me a message. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedbacks on, the episodes and any questions that you have. And then for those resources that Matt mentioned, we'll be putting those wherever you're encountering this on the World Wide Web. This will be nearby. So thanks again for joining me. This was an episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast.